Hey everyone, Gill Gross here post-match. Carlos Alcaraz versus Novak Djokovic, US Open 2025 semifinal. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video. Carlos Alcaraz gets his first ever win over Novak Djokovic on a hard court. He had lost 4 of his previous 5 meetings. This one he wins in straights 6-4, 7-6, 6-2 to advance to his second career major final on a hard court, second career US Open final. Before we zoom in on this match and narrow our focus, I actually want to start with some Novak Djokovic context because I just think it's important to start there. What Novak did this season is remarkable. To make the semis at all 4 majors at 37 into 38 years old, there is nobody his age right now, even in his zip code. He's in a different stratosphere. I mean, shout out Gael Monfils, who remains the oldest player in the top 10 currently. Shout out to Gael, but nobody is even close to doing what Novak is doing. He is a total outlier. Historically speaking, in terms of how well he's playing right now at his age, the list of competition would be very, very small. Ken Rosewall might have something to say. Roger Federer's health stopped cooperating with him right around this time, around 38 years old. But throughout this 2025, Novak's love for competition has shown very, very brightly, and his skill development in the midst of what has been, I think, a clear physical decline, his skill development has still been something to marvel at. And it has taken him as far as being, in these majors, the 3rd best player in the world. But he hasn't been able to grab even a set in these semifinals against Alcaraz and Sinner. So let's talk about the match. Right off the bat, this is the most calm I had ever seen Carlos Alcaraz start a match against Novak. Usually, when he's come out for these matches, of course, they've always been big matches with a lot of hype. And, we've witnessed all of them. Carlos comes out like a ball of unharnessed energy, and he's hitting every ball 90 miles per hour. That's the Alcaraz that I'm used to seeing in the first 20 minutes of these matches. Definitely, in their semi at Roland Garros a couple years back, and in the Australian Open final, it worked out a little bit better for Carlos. He actually got off to a good start, but still, it was just unvarnished energy and explosivity. And this time, I think there was a really clear effort to come out and play with a little bit of serenity, because especially the way he was hitting his forehand, he was controlled. He actually took his foot off the gas a little bit instead of flooring it. And he actually got some misses out of Novak. He benefited from a sloppy start to the match from Djokovic. And that's one of the benefits to just keeping the ball in, just easing yourself into a match and controlling the nervous energy that Alcaraz has at times let get the better of him. And, if you're going to hit everything huge against Djokovic, other than taking on more risk of making a lot of errors, if you don't pick your spots for when to inject pace when you're playing Novak, you are doing him a favor. So I thought that was a really good thing that Alcaraz did in the beginning, was actually just take a little pace off. I also thought that Carlos did a great job early on in the match, like first game, but then also in big moments, especially even in the second set tiebreak, of taking away that Djokovic slice serve. So there are, 2 serves where you're cutting around the right side of the ball. You're kind of those hook serves, those cut serves, and then you have your pronated serves where you're hitting the left side of the ball more so. And for a righty, those serves are directed at the righty backhand. Djokovic can hit all the serves, but there is no doubt, A, what his preferred serve is generally, and 2, what serve has destroyed Alcaraz in the previous two meetings. At the Olympics and at the Australian Open, Djokovic's slice serve to Alcaraz's forehand was just so fruitful. And if you recall my analysis after the Australian Open match, that was one thing that I thought was just inexcusable from Alcaraz's side, is that he got killed with the same serve that killed him in the last match. And at a certain point, it's time to take that one away. Carlos on big points did it. He leaned that way. I don't think he necessarily sold out, but I think there was a lean. And then from that lean, he would always get a really good jump out of his split step and cut off that angle as the serve, before the serve could really slide out of his strike zone. If this were Monday Match Analysis, I'd go back to specific points. I'd get very granular, but since this is a post-match, I'm just going to kind of move on. This was massive for Carlos, though, just taking away Novak's best serve. Djokovic's defense, let's talk about that. I feel like that is the thing that has sort of been glaring for Novak in these matchups against Sinner and Alcaraz, is his legs are not as difficult to hit through anymore. Not even really close against these high wattage offensive opponents. And, early on in this first set, I just felt he was a step slow into the corners. He was not defending against approach shots as well as you'd expect. So many of Alcaraz's approach shots ended up being forced errors. Djokovic just couldn't really get his feet under him on these passing shots. I thought the forehand cross court from Alcaraz was just very easy, high percentage damage a lot of the time. That said, Novak reads Alcaraz's shots extremely well. And this was something that Novak really had going for him on his side, because this was a competitive match for 2 sets. It was not a blowout. And part of it was how well Djokovic reads Alcaraz's shots. I mean, how many times did Carlos look to go behind Novak and Novak stayed home? And now we have Djokovic from a defensive position turning around points, not necessarily because he was explosively athletic, but because he anticipated correctly. I think this was one mistake for Alcaraz, just trying to go behind too often, losing control of points that way. And then the other thing is sometimes Carlos, I think, still being quite intimidated by Novak's defense. I mean, he missed his first 3 drop shots in the net, and all of them were open. I didn't mind any of the decisions. Alcaraz was inside the court, good, aggressive, attacking positions with Djokovic deep, good drop shot opportunities, and you leave 3 in a row all short. Not only is that so un-Alcaraz-like, but, it's like, at least make it, especially if the decision is right. I mean, it was shocking to see him miss those. So it's not that Djokovic's defense was shut out, because it wasn't, but it was not as suffocating as I think it needs to be for Novak to be at his best. And at the Australian Open, 3rd set and 4th set, Djokovic moved great. I don't think he ever got to that level of movement here. Serve accuracy from Alcaraz. If you look at the overall statistics, it's not going to look good. Alcaraz for the match was at 56% first serves in. I thought, we'll get to the second serve. Maybe I'll just cover it now. It never felt to me during the match like Carlos's first serve percentage was a massive issue for him. And that's partially because the second serve dynamic was another massive reversal from Australia. If there's one thing that I think really betrayed Djokovic, that maybe you wouldn't expect it to betray Djokovic, it was the second serve return on Novak's backhand side. He needs to rush Carlos and get control of second serve points so that he's not relying on the legs, which, as we've just covered, he has trouble doing at the moment against Carlos's offensive weaponry. And in Australia, that's exactly what Novak did. Carlos hitting kicked second serves, and Novak just taking control with massive returns. he did not have the confidence or the timing on his backhand return off of Alcaraz's kick. I would give Carlos a lot of credit. Many of these second serves were deep. Many of them were, well, none of them were slow. You know, they were usually all above 95 miles per hour. Thought well placed on the box. So I thought Alcaraz was taking appropriate risk on the second serve. But as a result, I never felt like Carlos was shooting himself in the foot with the missed first serves. Instead, I felt as if in big moments and clutch situations, Carlos came up with some serves that really helped him get over the finish line here. First set, 5-4. I did not think at this point like Alcaraz was playing particularly well. And this was going to be a tough game for Carlos to get through. And it was. Because despite not missing a single first serve, Alcaraz held at 30 and kind of just got through the game with some very accurate serves under pressure, including a service winner at 40-30 off the service line at 118 miles per hour, including a service winner at 30 all, which I thought Novak could have returned this one. I thought this was a wide serve that Novak had a play on. 15 all. Alcaraz, service winner on a cutter out wide. Love all. Alcaraz, service winner. So how about at 5-4, no returns in play by Novak? And I think this was important, again, because I think Djokovic was, at times, maybe in this moment, could have outplayed Alcaraz from the back of the court. Carlos wasn't really confident at this point in time. I would also point to the tiebreak. 5-4 in the second set tiebreak. Service winner, T. 131 miles per hour in the corner. One of the best serves under pressure I've ever seen Alcaraz hit. 5-4 in the second set tiebreak. How about 6-4 in the tiebreak? 100 mile per hour kick serve with good depth. Djokovic mishit the backhand return. Unforced error. Now, again, two-way street. You know, he's Novak. He's Novak Djokovic. I expect him to put a backhand return at 6-4 in a tiebreak back in the court on a second serve. I just do. But it was also a quality second serve, so both things can be true. I thought another thing that worked well for Carlos was the short backhand slices. Now, the drop shots were not a winning play when it was all said and done. And part of that was execution, and part of that was Djokovic, whenever he got there, just did something magical half the time. I said every time and then half the time. Oftentimes, okay, let's get a happy medium with my language here. Oftentimes, Novak was just phenomenal whenever he got to the drop shot, coming up with, brilliant chip lobs over Carlos's head. In the second set tiebreak, a wonderful short angle pass. But what I thought did work well was not the drop shot, but the short slice. And I think Novak's forward movement was a step slow throughout the match. Djokovic still looks really good laterally to me at times, especially when he's kind of locked in and kind of fully engaged on these big points. But he's a lot more horizontal when he gets tired. When he gets tired, the forward movement really slows down. And how many short slices did Alcaraz hit? Two things were happening. One, Djokovic would sometimes go to his backhand slice, not get there in time, and actually make a slice error. Novak's backhand slice was a little bit off in this match. The other thing that happened a few times was Djokovic would come in off of a poor approach shot, off of the short slice, and then Alcaraz would pass him. And what Carlos was doing on the pass was usually just hitting really, really hard passing shots into big targets, taking away Djokovic's drop volley. And that was effective. Djokovic had trouble volleying the really, really pacey and spinny passing shots. Frankly, as most players would. Now, the nuanced part here for Carlos. I actually don't think he played this match all that smart for a lot of it. I think he gave away far too much, especially on the backhand. Just a lot of gifts, a lot of errors from the baseline. He invited a little bit too much cat and mouse under pressure with some drop shots when it was not working, and when he was just kind of, Novak. Here's the thing. I don't like to say that Alcaraz shouldn't drop shot. I hate to say that, in fact. But there were some points in the match where it was time to make things as physical as possible, and it was Alcaraz inviting a cat and mouse exchange that was clearly going to end the point. And then Novak was phenomenal in these cat and mouse exchanges. So sometimes the simple stuff was clearly the right stuff, and Carlos just couldn't resist but make the point creative when I think that was playing into Novak's hands. I thought Djokovic was having way more trouble when Carlos slowed the ball down, stay in position, stay solid, and Novak, when forced to generate, was actually missing quite a bit. There was a game 4-all in the second set where Carlos went up love 30 and made mental errors on almost every point for the rest of the game. Shot selection errors on the backhand. There was a 27-shot rally. There was a love 30 forehand earlier in the set, I'll say, that Carlos tried to nuke for no reason. But there was a love 30 point, I think a 27-shot rally where Djokovic hit a great backhand trade cross court and Carlos changed line and hit the tape. It's the 27th shot of the rally. And this is where I think Carlos just couldn't fully lock down and when he needed to. But credit where it's due, because in the breaker, he cleaned it up. There were no undisciplined errors in the breaker. And there were a lot of them throughout the match. But when it was time for the second set tiebreak, Carlos didn't make any undisciplined errors. And let's go through the entire second set tiebreak because it did decide the match. I'll go through it quickly. Djokovic, slice serve out wide, serve and volley. Carlos, he cut it off. Stretch forehand return, low down the line, forced the half volley error. This goes back to the second thing I talked about. Carlos was going to take that serve away. He was going to take that serve away. And by the way, Novak hit a perfect serve. Perfect, but predictable. Carlos took it away. That's the adjustment from the Olympics in Australia. 1-love. Alcaraz, backhand slice cross court. Djokovic, forehand inside in, forehand way long, unforced error. There's the slice that drew an error, as it did often. 2-love. Djokovic, backhand drop shot, short cross court. Nice cat and mouse point. Awesome chip lob from Novak. Nothing Carlos can do there. At 1-2, another really good forehand return from Carlos. And built the point nicely with his forehand. Nice, responsible, high percentage approach shot. Forces the error. Now it's 3-1. At 3-1, backhand rally. Alcaraz just stays solid. Djokovic goes drop shot again, dumps it into the bottom of the net. You see what was happening? Just simple, solid, boring tennis for Alcaraz in this particular match. Not always, but in this particular match, that was what was winning for him. Okay, then it was 4-1. At 4-1, wide open forehand inside in for Alcaraz. Should have been a winner. He clips the tape. Unforced error. Notice, I'm not docking points away. That's not a mental error. There's nothing mentally Alcaraz did wrong. He just hit a bad forehand, and he missed it. Let's move on. 4-2. Alcaraz serve plus forehand drop shot. Djokovic scrambles up, chips a forehand cross-court angle to force an error. This was a great shot by Novak. Again, this is one where I think, all right, let's stick to what's working. You're the better player from the baseline when you're making it, playing the points patiently from the back. First ball drop shot, when it's kind of a force and it's not a clear winner, and you didn't work the point to earn that opportunity. Don't love it, but still not a mental error or not a mental, miss. So we can continue. This is where Alcaraz takes over. At 3-4, another high percentage, solid point by Carlos. Actually did some defending and some absorbing. Djokovic forehand down the line, into the net, unforced error by Novak. 3-5, Djokovic, Great serve +1, and he forced an error on a forehand down the line. Nothing you can do. Good point by Novak. Now it's 5-4. I mentioned that big service winner up the tee, 131, beautiful serve, and then the second serve. Again, Novak misses the return. That is the second set tiebreak. I just thought it was important to go through all of those points and point out that not one time did Carlos make a shot selection error. So, full credit there. Now, obviously, the resilience in terms of fighting spirit from Novak was not what it would usually be. You know, throughout his career, Djokovic would, he's come down from down 2-0, man, so many times. And not just when he was young. 2023, 2021, he was doing it seemingly three times a year, which is incredible. Not an official stat. I'm just saying, like, it's almost seemed regular. And obviously he did it against Sinner at Wimbledon, I want to say. Right? Yeah, I think so. He did it so many times. But physically at this point, it just seems the mountain is too steep. He doesn't believe he has it in the tank. There was the semifinal scar tissue. He was 0-9 in sets in semifinals going into this third. And it's hard to believe. When that's your context, when that's your reality, it's very hard to believe. So Novak didn't really play the third set very hard. It makes me wonder again about Fritz. And it's a totally different situation. But again, like if Taylor watches that semifinal, he's once again wondering, like, if I pushed it 5, did Djokovic even have another set in the tank? Obviously, it doesn't matter. Taylor wasn't good enough to push it 5. But that was in my head watching the third set. Like, if Djokovic doesn't believe in his like endurance to the point where he can't really bring himself to compete at his best in a third set, what does it tell you? So it was kind of a 2-set match, to be honest with you. All Carlos needed to do was go up 2-0, and the third was kind of handed to him. But this was a huge win for Alcaraz because I think mentally this has been a really hard head-to-head for him. It's been difficult for him to perform at his best against Novak, and he really needed to build his confidence in this head-to-head. But I also left the match feeling like if it's Sinner in the final, Carlos is going to have to up his game by a lot in order to beat Jannik. It'll be a different match. I wouldn't put that. I'm not saying that Carlos is in any kind of trouble, but he cannot copy and paste that level of tennis and expect to beat Jannik. He's going to have to step it up, in my opinion. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.